Hey guys, it's Kaylee. I am back with another What Sold from Last Week video. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing sales that happened quickly, sold for a lot of money, and some things that I wouldn't pick up again. I sell on three major platforms, which are eBay, Poshmark, and Depop. I try to cross-post all of my items onto those platforms. And so this is a combination of sales that happened on all three. Let's dive into the sales. All right, so the first thing we're going to go over are super quick sales. Some of these actually surprised me because a lot of them are more bread and butter. So I think you'll enjoy some of these. So the first one is a Carhartt hoodie. Carhartt is definitely a trending brand. However, in most cases, I'm only really looking for the canvas jackets, vintage or modern. It's not very often that I look at other things just because they usually don't comp well. However, I have noticed that men's larger size hoodies can perform well, and specifically, this Rain Defender line seems to be one with an increased sell-through rate. So this is a Carhartt men's Rain Defender hoodie. It doesn't say it here anywhere on the tag, but it does say it on one of the sleeves. So something to keep your eye on. It may significantly change your comps as you're looking up stuff. This Carhartt men's hoodie only took 1 day to sell. I sent out offers to watchers. I originally listed it at 30, and somebody accepted one of my offers to them for around $25, and my order earnings, which is before cost of goods for everything I'm talking about today, was actually higher than the sale price because I make a little bit off of shipping. And so my earnings were $29.01. Next up, this was another surprising one. This is a vintage Y2K item. This is the brand Wet Seal. I do like finding Y2K Wet Seal depending on what the pieces are. I think it is a brand that people should look out for. And I also have really good luck selling micro mini skirts. So not just mini skirts, but micro, meaning really, really tiny. And you can see I included those keywords here in my title. My title was Vintage Wet Seal Women's Y2K Micro Floral Mini Skirt, size 13, white, coquette, and twee. I listed this skirt for $30. It took 14 days to sell, and it sold for my full asking price of around that $30. My earnings were $20.97. Next up, another amazing sale. This is actually one of my higher sales as well. This is a Hollister vintage Y2K top, and here is that label. So this is a very, very on-trend piece, specifically these longer sleeve baby doll tops with that logo, and then the neutral color is like 10 out of 10 for all things people are looking for. It did have a couple of signs of wear on it, so I made sure to price accordingly. I listed this for $115 and then was accepting offers on it. It only took 5 days to sell, which is crazy. Somebody sent me an offer for 85, which I thought was perfectly reasonable, and I accepted the offer of $85. My earnings were $81.29. Depop has extremely low fees, so I get to keep a lot of my money, which is why I recommend as a platform. I get asked a lot after eBay because in my opinion, that's the best platform to list on if you want to make sales. They have so many buyers compared to the other ones. Then which platform? And it's really a toss up between Poshmark and Depop for me at this point, because while Poshmark does have significantly more buyers than Depop, Depop is quickly growing, and there's kind of this period of time in which there's trajectory, but not as many sellers on Depop as there are on Poshmark. So it's like a sweet spot. And I'm finding that a lot of stuff sells on Depop, sometimes quicker than Poshmark, and I get to hold more of my money. So it's been a fantastic platform for me. And I'm glad that I finally started being consistent over there because I'm starting to reap those rewards. So this sold for $85. Again, I had it priced for $115. I have no problem with struggling to accept offers. I want to get items moving. And so $85 out of 115 to some of you might sound like I accepted too low of an offer, but my goal is to move items as quickly as possible. Of course, the pricing needs to be reasonable, but to me, $85 was reasonable. Let me know down in the comments below, would you have accepted $85 for this top? All right, next up, this was another really quick bread and butter sale, and I've talked about this probably 100 times, but I like things that I frequently come across that I know flip quickly because they help to pad my sales. So if I'm having, a great day with high ASP items, it's not going to be like that every day. So it's good to have some of these lower end value items that also sell quickly that make up for the days where I'm not having high ASP sales. So Nike joggers, specifically in the men's department, I flip all day long. Their club fleece sweatpants perform really well for me in just about any size, and they usually sell for $25. The women's I have less luck with, but one thing I do look for are plus size women's Nike joggers. These are called the Dry Fit Essential running pants in a size 2X. I was expecting around $25 for them on eBay. I increased the price to $30 on Poshmark just to account for offers. Someone offered me $20 and I went ahead and accepted. The reason I did that is because I'm expecting 25 on eBay, and on eBay, I'm sending out 15% off offers, which means I was going to be selling these for close to $20, 20, 21 anyways on eBay. Why would I not accept a $20 offer on Poshmark? So again, get those flipping quickly and helps to pad my sales. These took only one day to sell. I did accept the $20 and my order earnings was $16, and we got these likely from the bins. Cost of goods at the bins, just because I know somebody's going to ask, for me on average is $1.50. I also sold this one super quickly. This is one of my favorite base layer brands to find. They're known for their merino wool. This is a men's 200 zone base layer shirts. I use keywords like outdoors and lightweight. This one sold for $50 in just 10 days, and my earnings were $40. I'm still seeing a ton of people buy base layers, so I'm going to continue picking up those wintry items even as we move towards spring. Next up, this was a surprising sale to me just because it sold on Depop, and I'm finding that Lululemon actually sells really well on Depop. I know that a lot of people think it's just vintage, style-based stuff, but that's simply not true, and hopefully you've noticed that throughout my sales reports every single week. I'm selling a lot of things on Depop that are style-based, but I'm also selling a lot of bread and butter brand-based stuff. I don't have a lot of luck with men's Lululemon anymore, so I'm very cautious to look up the exact style name, especially on a pair of shorts. These ones were called the License to Train linerless shorts, which had an increased sell-through rate compared to others. They sold in just 3 days. I had them listed for $35 and accepted an offer of $28. My earnings were $24.09. All right, a quick sale on eBay. This was a really awesome style-based piece. This is just the brand One Clothing. It is not a Bolo brand. You've probably seen it, but this just had so many great factors stacked on top of each other that I wanted to get it regardless of brand. So this is the brand One Clothing. It is a Y2K dress. It was asymmetric, so that's increasing the value. It was baby doll, and then it had a lot of extra details that really made it more of a unique piece. I listed this for $40. My exact title was Vintage One Clothing Women's Y2K Baby Doll Asymmetric Whimsy Goth Midi Dress, size large. This took only 8 days to sell for my full asking price of around $40. Got it from the bin, so again, $1.50 average cost of goods. And my earnings were $29.29. All right, this is another quick sale. This is also a style-based piece. This is the brand Robbie B. It is not necessarily a vintage Bolo brand, but I do find a lot of Robbie B stuff in vintage labels are pretty good style-based pieces, so maybe one that you want to keep your eye out for. This dress just took 8 days to sell. I did do a little bit of extra work on this dress because the front of this was a more basic cowl neck dress, great style base regardless, but the back had kind of like a show-stopping feature. And so I wanted to make sure that this wasn't my cover photo and that they could see the back as well. So I made a collage. I mentioned in the last What Sold video, it's so important that if there are unique features that you know are going to sell the item or significantly increase its value, you want to make sure that those are very apparent and showing in the cover photo. And so creating a collage is one way that you could possibly do that. So I made a collage of the front and back. We also, I don't know if you can tell, but we just put our mannequin on wheels. Nikki's husband came in and did that for us, and that's been awesome because that thing was getting heavy and now it can move around. I listed this for $55 on Depop, and somebody accepted an automatic offer that Nifty sends out for me on likes. And it ended up selling for $46.75 plus shipping, and my order earnings was $44.46. All right, moving on to the high price sales. Some of these, by the way, were quick sales. They just weren't in the 2 weeks or less. I had to go with 2 weeks this time instead of 1 week because I didn't have enough under 1 week sales. So our quick sales were 2 weeks or less for this week. But some of these actually did fall pretty close to that. And I'll tell you how long they took to sell. So this one actually was, out of all sales last week, the one that took the longest to sell. This is a vintage overland coat. And let me show you with the label here. This is absolutely a Bolo brand that you want to look for. However, it does tend to sit and wait for the right buyer. I had a couple things going against me, such as this was an extra small. And it's just one of those pieces that gets priced so high that if you want to wait for the full amount of it to sell, you're probably looking at close to a year or more. I listed this 256 days ago, so not quite a year, but pretty darn close. I paid $50 for this. I found it at like an antique mall where they have booths kind of thing for $50. I snatched it up because comps looked really good at the time. A lot of them were going for $300 and up. I think I originally had this price close to $350, and it has sat. I've had a ton of watchers. Occasionally I've had offers, but I try to hold out closer to that price. And I wish I wouldn't have done that because now a year has passed and it still hadn't moved. So again, my goal is to move items within 90 days or less. If they're not, I want to move that item at all costs. And so the fact that I've had this for a year and was trying to, squeeze as much money out of it as possible was not good for my business model and the goals I have set for myself. So I ended up getting an offer for $160 on Poshmark, and I went ahead and accepted that offer because it's been almost a year. So 50 into 160. My order earnings was $128. So if you subtract the $50 cost of goods, I ended up making $78 on this item. So a little bit more than double my money, but that $50 has been tied up all year long. And I am super focused on churning items and keeping my cash flow readily available. And this was the opposite of that. So got the item moving and happy to make a little bit of money off of it, but you can definitely sell yours a lot faster if you have a larger size, possibly better condition, and if you don't price as high as I did. Okay, this one was actually a really quick sale. It sold in just 19 days of being listed. Anytime I come across a jacket like this, I get super excited. This is like an aviator style jacket. This one had extra details. It was just St. John's Bay, but it was real leather. Was it? Yes, real leather. And it was faux fur lined. It was a men's. It had a ton of great details to it. If you try to look up a style-based piece like this, you're not going to get clean data, which is like accurate results. And so you just really have to know based on of experience, what adds value in a piece like this. And I have sold many of these in the past. And so that's why I had no problem picking it up. My exact title for this was St. John's Bay men's fur-lined leather aviator jacket, size medium, brown, biker, rugged, and moto. I listed this for $125. I did note that there was a little bit of wear to the leather, no holes, just like rubbing and discoloration. And like I said, this sold in just 19 days for my full asking price of $125, and my earnings were $98.12. So if you see any jacket that could be considered like an aviator style, definitely worth looking into, especially when it's got extra details like the fur. Okay, next up, another high price sale. This is a very blurry photo. This is a Lauren Ralph Lauren men's long wool pea coat. I have talked extensively about long dressy coats, both men's and women's, but especially when you have a great brand paired with a great style, men's, and great materials in a decent size, you can definitely price those things up. And this is kind of a combination of brand-based and style-based in my opinion, but regardless of brand, I have really good luck selling stuff like this. This only took 64 days to sell. Again, my goal is 90 days, so about 2 months. This I listed for 150 or best offer on Depop. It sold on an offer that somebody sent me for $120, and my order earnings was $114.65. Uh, Title, just in case you guys want to know, Lauren Ralph Lauren men's long line wool pea coat, size 42L, long, black, corporate, and formal. All right, this is another amazing sale. This is a completely unbranded dress. I actually got this in wholesale, and I wasn't really sure, I guess, like how good this was until I actually received it. It is, I, I'm pretty sure a vintage based on the feel of it dress. And this one seemed to be actually 70s. So I don't believe it was actually a Gunny Sacks dress because I didn't see any indication of where a tag would have been for it, but it looked just like a Gunny Sacks dress. And whenever you have something that isn't the real thing but looks pretty identical to the real thing, chances are you've got a great style-based piece. So I was really excited when this finally came in and I got to see it in person. I listed this as if it were a Gunny Sacks dress, meaning I used the same keywords that I would have used, and then I priced high, not as much as I would price for a Gunny Sacks dress, but pretty darn close. So my keywords for this were vintage women's 70s prairie renaissance maxi dress, size small, ethereal, angel, boho, and rare. I listed for $125 or best offer with pieces like this, especially with it being unbranded and not the real thing. You just never know what somebody is going to be willing to pay. And so I always slap best offer on stuff when I'm not sure. This took 82 days to sell, so within my 90-day goal. And I ended up accepting an offer of $106 on this. My earnings were $84.59 for completely unbranded items. So remember, if it's not the real thing, but it looks like the real thing and it has tons of the real thing factors, list accordingly and make sure you price up. All right, this is another fantastic sale. This one sold in just 15 days, so it just barely didn't make the cut of the 2-week mark for the quick sales, but definitely fell into some of my higher price sales. This is a pair of Laredo boots. I just showed these in a thrift haul. These things are so gorgeous. They ended up being a style with a really high sell-through rate called Miss Kate, and they were in really great condition. When I actually looked up the Miss Kate boots, not only did they have a great sell-through rate, but I also noticed that I was the only seller with this color in this size. So there were different colorways. Mine was a little bit more unique. So I priced up because of that. My title was, and I don't think I needed style-based keywords for this because the sell-through rate was so good on a brand-based item, but I added some and I think it helped to sell it quicker. Laredo, Miss Kate, Western Cowgirl boots, size 7, floral, Coachella, and country. I listed these for $125 and I accepted an offer of $90 in just 15 days. And my earnings were $78.73. So really excited about those. And if you see any kind of Western boots, I'd probably look them up, but especially if they have an interesting like embroidery or colorway, you can tell these have, some unique details to them. I always look those up. All right, and last one of the higher price sales. This was definitely not my highest price sale, but it is a pretty high style based one. And so I wanted to share it selling so you guys didn't miss this sale. This took 116 days to sell, so just over my 90-day mark, but it did sell for my full asking price of $50 plus shipping. My earnings on this were $37.05 for a completely style-based piece. This is the brand Robert Stock, which not necessarily a bolo brand, but they do tend to have some decent men's like style-based sweaters. The reason this one was able to sell for so much more was because it was a super thick cardigan. So sweater versus cardigan. Cardigan usually wins out on sell-through rate and pricing. It's just more of a unique piece. This one had interesting buttons. It was super thick. It had some cable knit details along the sides here. It was a men's larger size. This one was also 100% cotton, which doesn't always increase value, but knowing that we're going into spring out of winter, a lot of people switch over to not wool, but they're still willing to buy thick sweaters. So I think, in my opinion, this helped to sell it. And it was also a neutral color in a navy blue. I consider navy blue to be neutral. Navy blue, dark blues like this, very highly sought after. I definitely keyworded up the title. My title was Vintage Robert Stock Men's Thick Tennis Varsity Cardigan, size extra large, blue cable knit. And again, this sold for my full asking price, a little over 90 days. All right, now we're going to move into the not so great sales. These were items that either took too long to sell or they sold for a low amount. Actually, all of these took forever to sell past my 90 days. So this first one is Ava and Viv. This is either sold at Walmart or Target or Kohl's maybe. They're all the same to me at this point. I get them mixed up. But Ava and Viv, definitely not a bolo brand. However, I have had some luck flipping style-based plus size pieces. This is one that we got and it was just too plain. So I think that's a main reason it didn't sell. It also had a spot of discoloration. Plus it was only a size 1X, which out of all plus sizes, 3X and 4X perform the best for me. So the lower the sizes, the less luck I have. So yeah, lots of reasons that this didn't sell. And we've learned our lesson on picking up plain plus size pieces. This one took 120 days to sell. Like I said, once an item hits 90 days, we rework the price and add best offer. And I'm just trying to move the item at all costs. I accepted an offer of $8 on this, and my order earnings, because I make a little bit off of shipping, was $11.18. And hopefully this is a good lesson for you guys. I know you said in the last What Sold video that you like this section showing a few things that, you know, didn't go right or that I wouldn't pick up anymore. I think that this is a really good lesson for all resellers, which is you need to have a cutoff date for how long you're going to keep something in your store. At what point do you move it at all costs? And that's going to be different for every reseller. For me, it is 90 days because that's the sell-through rate of the items that I'm trying to pick up. But for you, if you're picking up, let's say 50% sell-through rate items, then on average, your items are going to take roughly 6 months to sell. If they don't, you know, what are you doing about it? Are you doing a tiered markdown system? Are you attempting to sell it in other ways? But at what point after attempting to move it do you say, this is it? It has to move at all costs because I don't want to tie up my cash flow anymore. And so for me, accepting $8 is a good thing because likely what was going to happen is I made, you know, $8 off of this, less my cost of goods, obviously. But what would have happened had I not accepted $8? I probably would have ended up ending this item eventually and redonating it because it's just not a great item, right? It's got flaws, it's plain, it's a Walmart, Kohl's, Target brand. So consider that. Have a cutoff date for when you're going to move things at all costs. Okay, next up, another one that took forever to sell. This also took 120 days to sell. This one sold on Poshmark. It is a Lane Bryant dress. I do not have good luck selling Lane Bryant. I find it to be extremely oversaturated on eBay and all platforms. Occasionally, I will make concessions for great factor stacking pieces, which I thought this was, but it didn't matter. Again, Lane Bryant is so oversaturated. There was probably 100 dresses like this, but at the time we got it, we thought it had unique factors. It was kind of a rainbow metallic stripe print, long sleeve dress, plus size. Did not matter. Took forever to sell. I accepted an offer of $10 to get this moving, and my earnings were $7.05, which is $7 more than I would have had I ended up redonating it. Next up, this one might surprise you. I pulled this one because it also took around 120 days to sell, 119 days. This is Lily Pulitzer, which normally I get very excited for. This actually had a lot of great factors. It was a Lily Pulitzer long sleeve blouse. It was silk. It was a multicolor. It was in excellent condition. You know, lots of great things going for it. However, this exact style ended up being oversaturated in this exact size. So even though it's a great brand, great factors, great size, more flooded on the market, which were the exact same one that I had listed, and it became a race to the bottom on pricing. And so because this item hadn't moved, I accepted, again, I want to move it at all costs. I accepted an offer of $20 and my earnings were $16. Earnings on this one were not as bad as the others, but it is definitely not something that I would pick up again, just because, again, sell-through rate is being flooded right now for a lot of Lily Pulitzer things. So if you're looking up the exact style with the correct size, if you're seeing a ton others just like yours, and there's not a 100% sell-through rate, it is probably one that you're going to want to leave behind. So decent sale price, but again, not one I would pick up again. Okay, and the last one is actually one that I would pick up again, and I'll explain why in just a second. This one also took around 120 days to sell. This is a completely unbranded modern denim vest top. These were super trendy during summer last year. You probably remember I flipped a lot of these, and you may have too. These are great because they can be leaned into so many different style aesthetics. I originally had this listed for $25, which is what all the other ones like this were selling for. However, this one sat and sat and sat. I accepted an offer of $18 on this just to get it moving, and my earnings were $20.29. Again, because I make a little bit off of shipping. My title was actually really good on this. Women's Y2K denim vest, crop top, size large, country, festival, ranch, rodeo, boho, and concert. So like all the keywords. So I honestly don't think like we did anything wrong with this listing. So why is it on this section of today's video? Well, this took so long to sell because it was listed towards the end of the season that it was going to sell in. And so that is something that I would do differently. So I would repurchase this item, but I would make sure it is in an appropriate season. So this is definitely more of a summery, spring type of item. Maybe you could even get away with fall, but this was listed towards the end of fall, which means that we're going out of season for this stuff. So even though it had all the right things, buyers stop looking for stuff like this as the seasons progress. So I would still get it in the right season, but that is a lesson that I wanted to talk through with you guys today. All right, you guys, so that's it for what sold last week. I hope that you all enjoyed watching. Hope you're also staying safe in this winter storm. I'm looking outside right now. All the snow happened yesterday, and we are still on a level 3. I can't get to the post office. I can't do anything. So we're making what sold videos. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.